It'll change
There we
it.
go. Thank you, Heather. Hello, everybody. Dr. Laura Foster here. And today, I can't even believe how excited I'm to say is this is Coffee with the Docs. You've been asking, you have messaged us. It is Dr. Heather Denniston of Well Fit and Fed, and I here for a very limited series. We're here for 4 consecutive Facebook Lives, Tuesday, Friday, for the next 2 weeks. And we are very excited to do this. The theme of this mini series is starting the year with both feet planted, something that is very near and dear to my heart. And we have 4 topics. Today, we are talking about confidence. Then Heather, we're going to self-compassion, finding your inner voice. And lastly, we're going to be talking about self-care. And as you can imagine, it's not what you think. So today, Heather's here with me. Heather.
Hi!
I'm so happy to have you back with me, or me back with you, or whoever you want to say it.
Well, and for those of you that watched us last year during the early stages of COVID, we had such a great time doing those Coffee with the Docs. They are still on the Well Fit and Fed YouTube page. If you want to go back and take a look at them, they were some great raw content in the face of a lot of fear and unknowing and all of that stuff that we were all dealing with back then, and still very applicable now. So I'm so glad to be back. This is really great. And confidence, I've been thinking about this topic a lot. So I'm excited to just kind of chat about this with you.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And if anybody knows us, we kind of have this thing where we try not to overscript it. But for me, confidence is something that I talk a lot with my clients as a coach, and it comes up in my retreats and in my programs, and probably the same for you. Am I right?
It is, but it's interesting. It is. The last women, I have a women's group called Virtual Cafe, and the last one happened to have the theme of confidence. And it was interesting how many women struggle with it, but haven't really thought about it and haven't really considered what's it about? What are the pieces of it? How do we build it? So I'm loving that we're talking about this today. Tell me how you define it.
So, it's interesting. Good segue, Heather, because when I thought about defining it, I thought, what do I actually think confidence is? And I kind of looked up a couple definitions and so on. And the thing that I got to is self-confidence specifically is this feeling of kind of like a favorable level of kind of like certainty around yourself and your abilities, right? So it's like, it's not something that you either have or you don't have, in my opinion. It is almost something that you develop, right? So it's like an expectation that you have of a positive outcome, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And when you and I were kind of going back and forth with this idea of confidence, we were saying, is it you have confidence or you don't have confidence, or like where is that? And to me, it's an and thing. And what I mean by that is I really believe that you can be confident and also have imposter syndrome, and you can be confident and still worry about your technology failing in your presentation, or be confident and still be nervous or fearful, or like this. I feel very confident in that I know that there's going to be a positive outcome in what we're doing right here. But that doesn't mean that I don't get nervous about it, right? And I think that's one of the things that is very important to it's very distinctive, at least in my mind, is that it's something that you develop. It's something that you create, and I think it can be very purposeful.
I think so too. And I think it's a martial art. It's a practice. It's something that we have to, I think, put ourselves in situations to challenge it a little bit and to work on it, not shy away from things that we're not good at or things we don't know how to do because we lack that confidence, to practice putting ourselves in the situations that help us hone that muscle. You hone a knife, you strengthen a muscle. You and I are the masters of mixed metaphors. We will
stand by.
I sent one to her the other day that was just like, if there was medal winning ability in mixed metaphors, I got the gold.
You did. So now tell me, you were talking about this article you read about confidence, and what were a few of the components of confidence that the author talked about in that?
Well, I was doing a little research for this group of women, and I loved this little concise article that I came across, and I have lost the who it was, but
Mm,
I will find it and will credit it because it was so good. The first thing was identify that lack of confidence is actually a symptom of some other things, and so it was this author's theory. And so the
yeah.
first one was that you have unacknowledged self-limiting beliefs. And so, for example, I'm going to use my sister as an example. She has a self-limiting belief that she's never been in shape. She'll never be in shape. She wasn't athletic. She's
Hmm.
this, she's that. Yet she's an amazing snowboarder. She is very, like, really in great possession of her body. She's very flexible, all of these different things. And so she has a self-limiting belief that holds her back from trying certain things, and it
Okay.
causes her to lack confidence in certain things. And so I think that, identifying self-limiting beliefs, addressing them can help in the long run build confidence.
Yeah.
Another one that I really liked was don't confuse memory as fact. So if you have a memory about you not being good at something, or you were told that, or whatever it is, that's your brain's interpretation of what happened. And very often we have the ability to rewrite the story. We collect additional data of people who were actually there with you, or you just literally rewrite it because
Yeah.
it's your perception of what happened, right?
Yep.
And then I think perfectionism is a big underlying issue with lack of confidence. Is I'm not going to be perfect at it, so I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be perfect, so I don't want to fail in anybody else's eyes. So
Yeah.
that was one. And then my other favorite one was this one. Curiosity is a whole subject on itself. I think the more curious we are, the easier it is for us to be confident. But the one I really liked for this was they talked about Navy SEALs, and that in Navy SEAL training, they teach them self-kindness talk, and not like sitting on the edge of your bed, like I'm good enough, I'm smart enough. No, it's in the face of chaos and crisis. How do you kindly and confidently talk yourself through so you
Mm,
move through this situation in a way that's very positive and gives you the best outcome possible? So these guys are in crazy situations. If they have really clear, confident, supportive self-talk, they've seen that it's a way more effective way to go through these situations. So I thought, well, if
mm.
Navy SEALs need to be kind to themselves during crisis, I can be kind to myself during crisis. So
I love that.
kind self-talk, I think, helps build confidence. So that was the gist of the article, and I loved it because I just thought sometimes, like you and I were talking about, it's hard to define confidence specifically.
It is. And I think it's easier to think about when we're not confident as opposed to think about building our confidence. And I read something that says, with confidence, you have won before you have started. With confidence, you have won before you have started.
Mm,
And because it's developing an expectation of a positive outcome, or not even just a positive outcome, but that you will be able to manage. It's kind of like that Marie Forleo thing. Everything is figure outable, right?
yes.
So like that's a very confident statement there,
Yeah.
saying it's not necessarily saying it's going to turn out the way I intended. It's saying I'll be able to manage it.
Yeah.
It'll be for my better good, or I'll roll with it, or I can, right? It's the and I can be nervous, but I'll still be okay. Or maybe I
Yes.
won't get the outcome I was looking for, but that's fine as well. Or I know that I'll learn something. It's like creating a spin on it. And for me, that's been something that's helped me, because
Mm,
you can look at other people and you can think that they're confident, right? That's why I talked about the and statement, because the perception can be that the person's confident, meaning that they're not affected or concerned or have fears or have self-limiting beliefs or any of those things. But the reality is it's like you tuck it under your arm and you move along with it, because you're developing this sense of I'll be able to do it, or I'll manage it. And I think that's almost like creating an empowering, it's like an empowering action step. It's part of the process of moving forward in life. And for me, I think that there are a few things that stand in the way of confidence, right? Number
yeah.
one is when I'm working with clients, I really notice that if they don't have a strong sense of self, like they haven't done much work to develop their self identity. And by self identity, I mean, without doubt, they know who they are. They know
Yeah.
what they stand for. They know what they're willing to put up with and what they're not. They know what their values are. Like if you don't know what your values are with any degree of clarity, then it's sometimes difficult. I notice that's one of the things that prevents you from developing your sense of confidence. And the other thing is when you don't have very good boundaries, right? Like someone else's life enmeshes upon yours, or you're the person that's chronically saying yes to other people at your own demise, for example, right? When we do those kinds of things over and over, we teach ourselves that we matter less. One of the times that we had hopped on a call, or maybe it was one of our lives, and you talked about this ability to stand up for ourselves, or what would be the other way to say it? You said you were talking about the fact that, do you renege on yourself, or do you break appointments with yourself, right? You were talking
Yeah.
about that, and it really stuck with me. And maybe you can speak to that for a second, because what I loved
Yeah.
about that was the message that you're telling yourself.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was like waiting with bated breath to wonder where are you going with this.
Me
And
too.
then now that you said it, I thought, oh, that's interesting, because I remember that conversation now. And also I posted something on Instagram like 2 ago that said, um, are you in the red or the black with your personal bank account? And your personal
Mhm.
bank account is how often you keep a promise to yourself, small or big. I'm going to brush my teeth before bed. You commit to it, you do it. That's a credit. Okay. I'm going to go and work out. You bail on it. That's a negative. So we want to be in the black. We want to have lots of credits in the bank of
Yeah.
keeping promises to ourselves and being consistent, because it says we respect ourselves. We value ourselves as much as we value anybody else. And so I think the more we can practice, just even in the tiny things, do not break a promise or a commitment to yourself. If you're going to break it, don't make it in the first place, because that messes with your
Yeah.
psyche. When you say to yourself, I'm going to go do this big hike on Saturday. You know you're not going to do it. Don't make the commitment to yourself. And so, so be clear about what you're committing to and what you're not. And when you do,
Yeah.
definitely follow through. You are so, so, so important to
Yeah.
not break promises to.
That's true. And it chips away at your confidence when you're chronically telling yourself
Yep.
that you can't count on yourself. And then you wonder
Yes.
why other people maybe don't count on you, is because you don't count on you. You've
Yes.
taught yourself that you are unreliable, and it
Mhm.
shows. And so I think that that is a very big one. And boundaries are very 2020 and 2021, aren't they? Like, I just feel like
Yeah.
having healthy boundaries, and I know Queen Bee Brene Brown talks about this quite a bit, but that's why. So for me, when we're talking about, for example, when I'm working with a client and we're talking about developing her ability to show up in the world, these are the things that we're talking about. You develop your confidence by really taking the time to understand who you are,
Yeah.
which means you have to ask yourself the questions and create space to hear the answers, and knowing your values, and not just saying, I know what I stand for, but literally, can you write them down? Do you know what they
Yeah.
are? Do you know which one comes first and which one comes second? Do you know why you value that one? How did you create those lists of values? And do your actions align with your values? If you say health is your number one value, which that's my number one value, do my actions align with that? Because
Yeah.
again, if they don't, then you again are chipping away at your own sense of self-confidence, because you again are not following through. You say something matters, like you said, I'm going to go
Yeah.
on that hike on Saturday. You know damn well you're not going to go do that, but you
Exactly.
just say it, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one is, like I said, the poor boundaries. I think those are really important. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you
You
for that.
brought up, I really liked what you talked about this is my value, but this is what it looks like on paper in my schedule. So like
Mhm.
you and I talked before we got on, I'm doing this live event January 16th coming up for those of you who are watching live. And one of the exercises we do is a time mapping exercise. And so what that is we write out our schedule as it is, full color. All the different roles of your life have different colors: your work, your family, your self-time, your partner time, social time, commitments, whatever they are, all different colors, so that when you are done and you fully filled it out, you can step back and you can say, what color is popping out at me? And is that how I want to be living my life? Is it aligned with what I say I'm about? So there was a time when I did a time map not that long ago that it was green everywhere, and green is work. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, that is definitely
Mm.
out of alignment with what I say is really important, which is balance and refreshing and restoring, and um, prioritizing family time and self-care and all of those things. I'm like, this is completely out of alignment. So doing something like that, take a look at your schedule, kind of see where, how is that alignment with your values and stuff. And if it's not, it's going to chip away too, because often you're doing stuff that A, you're not good at, or B, it's not in your heart. It's not what your heart wants to be doing. So
100%. And I don't want to just flip past that, because if there's anything that I have learned from you in the, oh my God, dare I say how many years we've known each other? Let's just say
long
decades, shall we?
time,
Long time. Is that
decades. Let's just do
you
that.
are incredible at that. Like you do planning events, you regularly take stock of your life and your business, and create opportunities for growth. And you have a very defined kind of map that you work with. And so I love, this is something you've been doing for yourself, your relationship with
Yeah.
your family. And now, over these last few years, you've developed it into this workshop, this live event, this annual planning event. And it is amazing. 3 hours, you walk people through this whole entire event. I mean, I know I was going to ask you about it at the end, but I feel like you should tell me about it right now.
We will spend not a lot of time on this, but I
Okay.
think it's important, especially coming out of 2020. I feel more of a sense of burden than ever to educate people about the importance, and you mentioned it earlier, of giving yourself space to look at what worked for you last year and what didn't, because we all got thrown into the tumble setting in the dryer. And so great time to take stock, but we have to allow space to do that. So during the event, we get together. It's a workshop. You bring a journal, you have a workbook. We look at last year. We start to set intentions for this year. We go through a goal setting process, an accountability process. We look at a time map. We look at your wellness why. I really I value people's time, so I want to deliver a lot. So it is full of great information. And at the end of it, you walk away with clear 90-day goals and action steps and some intentions for the rest of the year, word of the year, a deeply moving wellness why, and it's going to be great. So there'll be a link in the comments. So do, feel free to check that out.
Yep.
But I have a question for you.
Okay.
What are some of the things you do to help develop your own self-confidence?
I actually, because confidence has to do with developing this positive sense that things are going to work out. I really have learned that my confidence has developed when I created, just what I said, more about learning about myself, right? Like if I'm going to believe not just in the universe, but in myself in the universe, then I want to make sure that I create a really clear connection with who I am, what I need, where I'm at, what's working for me, exactly kind of just what you just talked about. But it's this sense of myself. And this came this really became really obvious to me when a number of years ago, and if you've followed with me for very long, you'll know that I've talked about this. I had a bit of a breaking down of my own life where there was lots of amazing components of my life. And then there were parts that were completely out of alignment with who I was. And those out of aligned parts were chipping away at my confidence, but also in the quality of my life. And no matter how much energy I put to the things that were working, it didn't make up for the things that weren't. And so, kind of like 2020, like a lot of the balls in my life kind of fell on the ground. And we talked about this last year, is you have the option of choosing what you're going to pick up. Make sure you know what you're doing. And so when I was picking up the balls of my own life, I really had the opportunity to ask myself some questions and connect in. And this is where we're talking about, I really understood who I am, and it's an ongoing development, by the way, but let's just say I really started to set the foundation for who am I, what matters, and so on. And this is this inner connection that I've just worked so hard to create and maintain and support going forward has definitely helped me, develop my sense of confidence. But also, I really noticed that again, back to those self-limiting beliefs, my conscious 51-year-old brain did not think that I had these limiting beliefs.
Mm.
But we all have them.
Yep.
And it's great to know them because then they give you a sense of where you're blind. It's no longer a blind spot. You know what your awarenesses are. Ah, right. I do that. What's the truth of it though? But here's the thing that I got around it. I gave myself permission to a number of things. Number one, I gave myself permission to not have to know the whole path, right? In order for me to say yes to something, I don't have to know that A and B looks like this, and then C looks like that, and D looks like that. Instead, I do my best to plan, but I have chosen deliberately and consciously to believe that I will figure it out as I go, right?
Absolutely.
And also, I have given myself permission to be a beginner. Like, we start things over and over and over, and sometimes we get really good at something. Like I was a chiropractor and practiced for 25 years, and I'm really fucking good at it. I'm just going to say I was. And so then when I switched over to kind of show up in a complementary but different way, I had this expectation that I had to be at that level where I had honed my craft, shall we say,
Yes.
for 2.5 decades. Well, that's ridiculous. And it was preventing me from showing up at all. And let me tell you, it really chipped away at my confidence.
Yeah.
The very act that I gave myself permission to be a beginner, how ridiculous is that? And maybe that's a little bit of what you were talking about before, where it's this self-talk, right? Like so instead of me focusing on the fact that maybe I don't know exactly how to do anything, I'm not a master at a certain craft yet, it's okay because I'm developing this sense of I'm getting there.
Yeah.
The way I'm showing up is exactly the way I need to be showing up right now. And I can learn as I go, and all the wonder and beauty that happens when you're a beginner. A beginner's mind is an open mind if you allow it to be. So, I could go on and on about this, but it's this compassion, and we'll talk about that in our next session, but it's this compassion, right? It's how do you speak to yourself in the difficult moments and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And
How do you like,
well,
what are ways?
I'm happy that you said so many nuggets there. I hope I can remember. One is when you started saying you spent a lot of time on self-identity, and some people A, aren't sure what that means, or B, they have this preconceived notion that it's selfish to spend time on self-identity. But I'm with you 100%. And here's why. The more I learn about myself, the less I'm going to compare myself to others, because I'm clear in who I am and what my path is.
Yes.
And if I compare myself less to others, confidence often comes from lack of confidence often comes from comparison.
Yes.
And so when you said that, I'm like, yes. And I've seen Laura walks the walk. Like, talk about living out what you profess. I've seen you do all of this work, highs and lows, and learn from it, and turn around and be able to articulate and teach it in a way that is super, super digestible. So I love that. And there was another nugget in there.
Well, I think you might have lost it because I went on in this monologue. I could feel myself getting excited, and then I was like,
it is exciting.
I was like, oh, right.
I know what it was.
Okay, go ahead.
It was that you're talking about, you give yourself permission to be a beginner, and I have had to work on that as well. We both transitioned out of successful practices into this new space and clunked along for a while. I've always loved that you talk about giving yourself permission to be clunky, and I like that term. But also, I think that beginner's mindset, the more we can nurture curiosity, which taps into an entirely different part of the brain than self-judgment and all of those sorts of things, the more we can grow the garden of curiosity, the more these weeds are pushed out. And so, that's definitely something for me. I think we're transitioning to, like, how do I strengthen that muscle? I really focus on curiosity, but a couple of things is just trying small new things and getting a little bit of confidence each time you try something small. Look for opportunities to go, okay, I've never done that before. I'm going to try that. It doesn't have a huge cost if it doesn't go well, but it'll give me an opportunity to go, well, I did that and I did that and I did that. I can do this. So that's number one. Again, the whole idea of getting grounded in your self-identity helps you understand that this is your journey and that's her journey and that's her journey and that's her journey. And if I'm shaky in this, then I go, oh, well, maybe I want to be that. Well, maybe that's what I should be. Maybe this, and then it gets right. So then come back to, wait a second. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? All of those things, and who, like really getting to know yourself, which I think is so key. And I think finally, this is sort of the same as trying new small things. A colleague of mine, James Garrett, did this awesome, I don't even know how long he did it. I think it was 30 days of rejection. And he literally went out with the intent to get rejected for 30 days to practice rejection, to practice like what that feels like, how to recover from it, to stretch that muscle and go, it's not the end of the world. So he did things like tried to return something he bought at Walmart at Target and trying to convince them. He did another thing where he went through the drive-through and asked some insane question and really tried to convince them that this is what they were going to be giving. And so he would get rejected and rejected and rejected and rejected so that he could build his confidence muscles, knowing it's not the end of the world. I can do the next thing. I can go out the next day and get rejected again. And I thought it was hilarious. And it was a very big example of practicing a little bit of failure in our life is great because it allows us to go, like, I had a big fail this week. I mistakenly sent an email meant for 30 people to 3,000 people that was completely not meant for them. And it was me. I was hasty. I did, it was a fail. And what I noticed about it was that, I got down for probably a couple of hours. And then I felt my resilience going squeeze and up I went, done, didn't think about it again. And I think that's only come from being okay in the company of failure, getting curious about, okay, how do I want to do this differently next time? How can I recover from this? What are some new ideas I could do to turn this into lemonade? Those sorts of things. And so I think getting comfortable with that.
I love that. First of all, I see a mini challenge in our future.
Rejection challenge.
We'll have to bring him in as for a consultation.
For sure.
I feel like maybe I live that on a daily basis. And I can tell you, 30 years ago, oh my God, was it 30 years ago? Almost 30 years ago when we started our chiropractic education, let me tell you, it was not the same landscape.
Oh,
correct?
Yes, correct.
Right? And so you'd be all excited about your thing. I'm like 12 years old. I'm like, I wasn't, but I mean, okay, whatever, 24, whatever. And I was all excited and I would tell somebody, what I was going to be. And depending upon oftentimes the response was not what I wanted.
Yeah. And about being a chiropractor.
Yes. About being a chiropractor. Yes. And, and of course I was particularly sensitive to it because I was, barely, pretty much a young adult. And I didn't have a lot of experience in being me for me. Right. So I cared too much what the other person thought. So if I didn't get the response I was looking for, and that's what I'm trying to say, is that it was a different wellness community 28 years ago than it is now. And so when I wouldn't get the response I was looking for, like, honestly, it would just, but I learned resiliency. I learned that their opinion is their opinion and it actually has nothing to do with me. And these are all things that relate to confidence. But there is one thing, and I want to be respectful of people's time, so we'll wrap this up pretty quickly because we'll see you on Friday. But one thing I want to say is that is just something that you do. You learn it in small bites, but you have to be willing to be conscious to what's going on. You can't just live your life on autopilot and never be reflecting. Like when something doesn't feel good, our intention is to squash it and put it down. But the
Mhm.
reality is you don't want to like stay in that pot of not feeling good,
Mm.
but you want to poke at it. You want to pull in some threads. You want to ask yourself some questions, because what you learn most often comes from the places and the times when you didn't feel great, when
Yeah.
it didn't go well, when you persevered when it was shit. That's when you learn who you are. You don't
Yeah.
really learn who you are from the highlights, the great stuff. You get praise, it feels good, but you don't develop your tenacity. You don't develop the
Right.
grit. You don't, it's the digging in. And I think that's exactly what you've been talking about. So I love that you said that.
So that's something on that. Yesterday, I was in a coaching call, and he said, "There's a quote. I can't remember who it's from, but everyone says find your bliss, right? That's not actually the quote. The
Okay.
quote is find your blisters, and you will find your bliss." And
Hmm.
I love that because it talks about if you get into the rough stuff and the hard stuff and the things where you get punched in the face,
Yeah.
that's when you can find your bliss because you learn more about yourself, you become more
Yeah.
confident, you get very, very clear. So I love that quote, and I thought it went well with what you just said,
Yeah.
which was great. One thing I learned as a kid, I went to a private boarding school for grade 6, 7, 8, and 9. And so I was away a lot of the time. And it was during a very formative time in my life where I was starting to try on what confidence looked like. And I came back and went to public school. And my very first report card from my English teacher, actually from two teachers, one said I was lofty, and the other one said I was arrogant. And here's the thing,
Whoa.
there is a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And we've seen this probably in friends or family members or whatever. They think they're coming off as confident, but it's actually arrogance. And so I wanted to just spend a second
Hmm.
on this because I think sometimes as we practice confidence, if we're not clear on what the delineation is between the two, we can cross over that line. And we don't want to be over that line.
Right.
And so with confidence, we can appreciate our own accomplishments for sure, but we come at everything with a growth mindset, which we've talked about through this whole thing. We're willing to learn, we're willing to fail, we're willing to look silly in front of other people. Confident people are more curious about others and less concerned with what you think of me.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
sister always has this funny, she's like, enough about me. Now, what do you think of me? And and she does it as a joke because she's one of the least arrogant people I've ever met in my life. But it's a funny statement. But I also think confident people, and you've been in the presence of them, they shine light on you, not on themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think becoming aware of that just as a delineation, not so much as somebody who's maybe, 40, 50, or 60, who's starting to build their confidence, but as a young person, I've seen it in,
Yeah. Mhm.
17, 18, 19, 20-year olds, where they're really walking the line of that. And I think
That's
it's an
true.
important distinction to make as we educate our kids. What's the difference between confidence and arrogance?
It's true. And that's such an interesting thing because between my partner and I, we have four teenagers between the ages of 17 and almost 20. And I'm not saying they're arrogant or anything, but you're right. There is. That's where you mostly see it. I love that in the last few years, more than ever, have been willing to be vulnerable
Mhm.
with my children around what I try, how I feel when I try it, because they mimic something, or they told me something at one point where their belief, their perception was that everything I try works out, and that I'm always good at everything, and I have never stumbled along the way, which
Mhm.
is crazy.
Yeah.
First of all, you got to love kids. Thank you for thinking that about me. What a ridiculous pile, right? Like, of course, that's not true. So all of a sudden I realized, I'm like, am I not sharing enough with my kids? Not to burden them, but to
Yeah.
let them know what my journey has been. And so now I speak more about what it was like from the perspective of, like, I understand this happened to me when I was your age, and that happened to me, and I can see how they are just like, they take it in, and this is aging myself, but it's like a card in the Rolodex. You're like, oh, right. And now I feel like they are starting to see a more realistic
Yeah.
perception of really what it's like. I mean, it's never going to be the same because it's what you said at the beginning. Something happens in life, we put it through our own filter.
Yeah.
Our filter is based on our beliefs, our past experiences, our traumas, you name it, probably, years of generational things. And then we create a meaning to it, and then we call it true. Right?
Yeah, it's the meaning that we walk away with. Like the meaning is the memory, right? And so,
Right.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
I don't know
anyway,
if you know, just one more thing because
okay.
about that, and that I don't know if you know Marie Forleo's story. At least I'm remembering that it's her about her dad at dinner. Do you remember this story?
Mm-mm.
So she comes from brothers and sisters. They'd all sit down for dinner, and the dad would go around the table and have them, each of them, talk about what'd you fail at today.
Oh yes, I did hear that.
And I love that because she said it, first of all, it nurtured great conversation. It got us very comfortable with failure, and we had lots of laughs and lots of it's okay and you're going to get through it and how are you going to solve it and all of those things. And I love that he didn't want to hear about their wins. He said that you don't grow from that, you grow from your failures. And I love that, and I'm often reminded of that. But yeah,
I love it. I love it. Okay.
Hey, I just want to check if there's any quick questions before.
Okay. Oh, and while you're.
Yes, there's lots.
Oh, there is. It is. Let me just say, for you that are on the other end, it is very difficult to be me and her and be on Zoom, going to live on Facebook, because you can't both be on Facebook live. I don't know if you know that. They took that away because, why would we have that convenient function? And so here we have to do this. And then we're trying to be cognizant of your questions, but then there is a lot going on over here.
It's a lot of, I'm here, not a lot of questions, which means we're doing an amazing job, right?
Okay.
At least that's what I hope.
That's our perception anyway.
That can be our walk away. Dawn asks, her thing is instead of arrogance versus confidence, it's be confident, not cocky. I love that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And thank you, Brittany. Brittany says, you two are doing amazing. Which is really awesome. So next Friday, guys, 9 a.m. PST, we're doing
this Friday.
We're doing self-compassion, which is going to be a great talk. I love talking about that.
And it would be really fantastic. First of all, it's not going to, we'll put a link on all of our social pages, but it's going to be on Heather's Well Fit and Fed Facebook page, just to make it really super confusing. We're going to go back and forth. I've full confidence that we'll all be there. So it'll be 9 a.m. PST, 12 p.m. EST, just because I know we have a lot of people coming from there. And before you kind of hop off here, two things I want to say is, one is, talk to me about self-compassion. What are your questions? What are your comments? Whatever comes up when you kind of take that word in and that concept. Number two is, I'm going to ask Heather to put a link to her event on January 16th. That's her live event, the annual wellness planning event. You'll see me there. It'll be a fantastic day. I'm looking forward to it. It's 3 hours full. And by the way, she is a wellness expert. Like, we're talking certified, not just, hey, I'm a wellness expert. She's amazing at it. So these are regular talks that she does to corporations and to clients and to general public. So packed with such great stuff. So well worth your time. I know some of you might go, it's only 3 hours. Other people are like, oh my God, it's 3 hours.
Yes.
Honestly, do it. So Heather, please go back in and link up the event there for everybody. And I just want to say thank you so much for meeting with me today, Heather. It's fun. Heather is in, I don't know if you know this, but Heather is in Seattle, Washington / Phoenix. And I'm here in Kelowna, BC, and we just don't get to see each other. And so this is such a wonderful way. And I'm so grateful for everyone who shows up with us and contributes with their energy or their questions. And
I love it. Thank you, Laura. And we will see everybody on Friday. Bring a friend. If you have somebody just say, hey, come watch this with me, that would be great. If they can't see it live, send it over to them when they're done. And we will look forward to seeing everybody there.
Okay,
on
great.
Friday.
All right, everybody. Thanks, Heather.
Bye. Thank you.